Hello, this is Mr. Vargas. Sorry I could not be here today. Because I couldn't be here, I decided to record a lesson on input programs. So that's what I want you to work on today. So input. I'm gonna do an example where I explain all the different elements of getting input in Java. So I'm going to go to BlueJ, and the first thing you're gonna want to do is create a new project. So we're gonna do new project, and we're gonna call it input. I already have that, so I'll do input projects. And then so this is where we're gonna do all of our input projects. So I'm gonna have you work on four different ones that are right here, but I'm not actually gonna do one of these. I'm gonna do an example instead. So I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna do new class, and I'm gonna just call it example, and then I'll open that up. I'm gonna just delete all of this stuff that it adds. And the first thing that you're gonna wanna do with import, which is something that we haven't done before, is we're actually gonna we're gonna start off with a different line of code. So we're gonna use an import statement. So import java.util.scanner. And this imports a library of code that you can that contains a lot of different things that are related with the scanner, which is the thing that allows you to get input from the user. So you're gonna have to add this line of code, semicolon at the end, to all of your programs today. So you're gonna start out with that, and then we go back to what we're used to: public class, the name of the project. So this one's gonna be called example. Public class example. Yep, brace. And then public static void main string bracket args. All right. And now we have to do something else that's kind of new. So you guys should remember these from the last two projects, but now we need to actually instantiate a scanner object. Another way to say it is we need to create a scanner variable. All right, so if you remember when we created variables, we used to do like int and then the name of the variable. Well, now we're gonna do, this is not an int, this is a scanner, and then you can give it any name you want. Usually most like classes and curriculums and even programming in general, they tend to give scanners a very standard name. The two most common are reader or keyboard. I'm gonna call it keyboard. So scanner keyboard. Now this could be called anything. It could be called Vargas, but we're gonna call it keyboard. Scanner keyboard equals new scanner, and then in parentheses you have to tell it where to read from. Pretty much for 99% of the time, we're just gonna be doing system.in. That just means like the terminal, the system terminal. We probably will do a project or two where we're reading in from a text file, but 99% of the time, this line of code can basically be exactly the same. For all of your projects you do today, this line of code and this line of code are gonna be in all of them. So far we've only done setup work. We haven't even asked for an input. So let's do that. Now the interesting thing about input is that you need to use different functionality for when you're getting a piece of text from the user, or a number from the user, or a whole number. You have to do one way, a decimal point number you have to do another way. So I'm gonna do all three. All right, so let's get a piece of text from the user. So let's ask the user for their favorite game. So string game equals, now instead of just typing in, The Last of Us, like we were doing in the last set of projects, you're gonna ask the user for what their favorite game is. So we're gonna do keyboard dot next line. This will read the next line from the user. And we're missing one important part, which I'm gonna add in a second. Now, what I'm gonna do something with this variable though, just so that I can prove that we've actually read it in. So let's say game is let's say is very underrated. Okay, So let's run this program, and we're missing like a feature that's kind of just more for um usability. So notice it just says type input and press enter. So I could write The Last of Us, and it says The Last of Us is very underrated, but it never actually asked the user for what is their favorite game. So that's like, the user just needs to know off the top of their head that they have to do that. Now these projects are just for us, so you kind of know what you're supposed to type in. But even though it's just for us, I feel like it just looks a little I don't know, user unfriendly to have it be like that. So I'm just gonna actually just output what is your favorite game. So now let's run this. What is your favorite game? Let's see, Breath of the Wild. Of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is very underrated. So we've done user input. We've asked the user question. We read what they typed in, and then we used it in a sentence. How do we do that? We did it with this line: keyboard dot next line. So keyboard is a scanner. Next line is one of its methods. This one reads the next line of text. All right, but I mentioned it's different if you want to get a number. So let's now ask for their favorite number. System.out.println. What is your favorite number? All right, and now we're gonna do int num equals keyboard, but we're not gonna do next line. We're gonna do next int. Notice that the I is capital over here, the L is capital over here. This is very common when you're naming methods or variables in programming in general, because you can't have spaces. They tend to capitalize the first letter of subsequent words in the name. So the first one is lowercase, but any like other words, they're capitalized to make it easier to read. So next int, and now let me print out a sentence with int, and I'm gonna do some math over here. I'm gonna say that number squared is, and I'll just do that just to prove that it's an int, because if you read this in as a string, then you can't do math with it. But so if you want a number, a lot of times you want to do some kind of arithmetic operation or something with that number. So let's do num times num. Notice I put it in parentheses, the num times num, because this is a string, and if you go to add a string to a num, it will like turn it into a string. So I'm just gonna put it in parentheses. I think this will be easier to demonstrate in class, like why I put it in parentheses, but it's just one of these little weird issues. All right, so let's run this. And let's run our example. And what is your favorite game? So Mario. What is your favorite number? So I'll put 4. That number squared is 16, so we know it's working. Now when you go to test this code, if you just want to like, you can comment the first part out. I'll show you in a second actually. When I go to test, I'm going to do one more. When I go to test it, I'm going to comment these 2 out, so that I don't have to actually answer that part. All right, so now I want to show you how to do a decimal point number. So enter a decimal point number. Or I guess this isn't really a question, it's a command. Enter a decimal point number, exclamation. It's a bossy program. So now let's do double num2 equals keyboard dot next, and this time it's gonna be double, next double, and we'll do system dot out dot println the number you entered is, I'm not gonna do anything fancy with it. The number you entered is, and then I'll do num2 right here. So let's compile this, and now let's test this. And I'm gonna put a comments around here. I'm gonna comment this. So notice how I put a slash star and then I put a star slash. That allows me to make this code not active, but I don't have to delete it. So after I'm done testing, I could just get rid of them and the whole program will be there. All right, so let's run this. Compile. Enter a decimal point number, 4.3. The number you entered is 4.3. And let me show you something else actually. If you run it again and I put 4.0, oh, and actually no, I'm gonna just put 4. If I put in 4, it says the number you entered is 4.0, right? Because I entered an integer, but I'm storing it in a double, so it turns the integer into a decimal point number. Now, some of you might remember that in the presentation, I said you can't store decimal point numbers in integers. And that's correct. You can't. You can't store a decimal in an integer because the only way to do that is by losing precision. But you can do the opposite. You can store a whole number inside of a decimal variable. And let me show you. I'm going to run this program now. And I'm going to do favorite games, Zelda. What is your favorite number? If I try to do, so remember, this one is supposed to read an integer. If I do 4.3, I get an error, right? This is a runtime error. It says input mismatch exception. So you cannot store a decimal point number when if you're doing keyboard.next int, it needs to read a whole number. If it finds a decimal point number, it doesn't know what to do, and you get into this problem. But you can do it the other way around. But anyways, so here is your example for input. And let me see. Let me open up. These are the programs you have to do. So you're gonna do a program that asks the user for their name and then output the sentence. This is basically the same thing I did right here. Then you're gonna do a program, the storyteller program that you did in the chapter on variables where you asked for 5 variables. Well, now you're going to those variables, instead of hard coding them, you're gonna use the scanner to try to ask the user for those 5 things, so it can be a true Mad Lib program. So this one might be a little challenging because it has at least 5 input statements, and you have to use a previous program to do it. So the first one's pretty easy. Second one is actually very easy. The third one is actually very easy too. So if you're struggling with number 2, you can skip that one and go to basic int input. In this one, you're gonna write a program that will ask the user for 2 numbers and it will output the sum. So over here, I output the number squared. So the sum is almost the same thing. So look at this one for your first one. Look at this one for the third one. And then the fourth one was write a program that will ask, this one uses double. Ask the user how much they want to save in a year, and then it will output how much they need to save per day. So think about that. If the person says they want to save $1,000 a year, per day, and I actually have this completed in another project. Let me show you how it looks when you run it. Input programs. So saver. How much do you want to save in a year? If you want to save $1,000 a year, to achieve your goal, you should try to save 2.7, and then you have a whole bunch of decimal points. Don't worry about that. There's ways to format it, to cut it off, but we don't need to get into that. But as you can see, I did a division, and as you can see, there are decimals involved. So even though I have 1,000 up here, it read it in as 1,000.0, and then it divided it by the number of days in a year, so 365. And so that's, if you save that amount per day, in a year, you'll have 1,000. All right. So that's pretty much it. So thank you for watching. Good luck. Do your best. We're gonna have class tomorrow, so I will be able to sign off. If anyone ran into problems, I'll be able to help. And we're gonna have another set of input programs to practice. I know input is probably the first, I think, challenge. I don't know if it's challenging, but it's somewhat complicated topic we've done. Like, it involves multiple things. And I find that it usually takes some students some practice to feel confident with it. So if you don't feel quite confident today, no stress, right? That's good actually, right? That means you're actually gonna start learning stuff, right? When you don't feel comfortable, because after a week, I guarantee you, you all will. This will be second nature to you. So thank you for watching. Be good for the substitute, and good luck.